Welcome to another edition of What Saith the Scriptures television program. And this is Harley Howard again, your host, as we continue in our verse-by-verse studies or our expositional studies in the Bible. And we're currently going through the book of Isaiah, chapter 40, this afternoon. We'll wrap up verse 17 and God willing get into verse 18. Again, looking at the topic of the comfort of God to Judah. And this is actually part 17 of that study. Again, this morning, I may mention that from the 20th until the 24th, there will be no Committed 100 broadcast. I have a prior commitment that's going to take place in the morning every day that week. And so I just want to make you aware, and I'll keep doing that. Also in August, I will be taking a few days off. It'll give you a chance to catch up if you're of that persuasion, to catch up as a rather than keep up. I would prefer you keep up than catch up. Nonetheless, that's what's going to happen. I am amazed as I look at the study of the Word of God, even both in Hebrews in the morning and Isaiah in the afternoon, just how we have wasted so much time of our lives not looking at how the Godhead is to be exalted. We really don't spend much time in the proper sound exegesis and study of the word pertaining to the person of the Godhead. It's incredible. We were looking at the individual exaltation of man and his insignificance over the last few weeks. And then last week, we began to look at the collective insignificance of man, as we will look today and probably next week as well, and probably over the next few weeks, because the 40 chapter series of Isaiah is amazing in terms of really focusing one's attention on who God is. So we already know that compared to God, man is irrelevant, and even the collective of man altogether, as verse 15 says, behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket. You could take a drop of water and drop it in a big pail, and that's how significant man is. You probably can't even see the drop unless you're looking for it. And he says are counted as the small dust of the balance. So if you get a scale, there's going to be dust on it, and it's so weightless that it has no effect on the balance of the scales or moving any of the sides of the scale. He taketh up the isles as a very little thing. If God wanted to snatch islands out of their place, it would be nothing for him to do it. Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beast thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. Lebanon was known for its not only abundance of trees, but some of the best wood. And he's saying it wouldn't matter. You couldn't burn the whole place down as an offering to God. And the beast giving a sufficient burnt offering would be irrelevant. You don't have enough beasts to offer up to God. And then he says, all nations, which is one of my favorite verses in the Bible, all nations before him are as nothing. And they are counted to him less than nothing. And vanity is another way of saying nothing. So it's quite a statement for God to make this trilogy of nothingness that he uses to discount the significance of nations compared to him. That would include their existence, their glory, their people, their everything. All nations in his glorious presence are as nothing. We don't think that way. We don't think of it collectively, and we don't think of it individually. We are a very proud and arrogant people, and we waste our time trying to make names for ourselves because that's nothing but pride. And when you think about that in terms of compared to God and his plan, it's nothing. I was looking at another one of these creators, whatever they call themselves, 24 dead. All these worshipers and followers dead. Their life is vanity. You can have all this stuff and have nothing of any importance, which is spiritual life. I'm convinced spiritual life is really life. That if I didn't have spiritual life, not only would I have been dead, but it wouldn't have mattered because spiritual life is the only life that kept me around, kept me alive. This world, all it did was drag me down to death. There's nothing satisfying about this life. It will end and nobody will care. And then what? What happens to us after that is more important than what's happening right now. All nations before God are counted as nothing, as if they were non-entities, as if they never existed. That's all the nations. And if that be true of the collective, how much more true is it of the individuals that make up the collective? All these are more than enough sufficient reasons for people to understand who God is. And with that understanding comes worship. Excuse me. With that understanding comes submission. And then from that submission to God comes worship. As far as God is concerned, combine all the nations that were, are, and will ever be. If there's ever tomorrow, he says they were not real in comparison to him. That's how insignificant mankind is, and yet we don't think in those kind of terms. We do think we're important. We're important as a nation. We're important as individuals. We're important here and there. We spend our time here and there worried about the affairs of life and not be concerned at all about who's really in control. Until, like I said last time, it's chest clutching time. Even more frightening than that, he considers them to be less than nothing and worthless. Vanity means worthless and meaningless. So that's quite a statement from the Creator when mankind is awakened to the reality that they are really nothing. Even Paul expressed the same truth in the New Testament. Let not a man think that he is something when he is nothing, deceiving his own self. You're nothing. If Christ didn't save us and put us where we are, what would it matter? Psalm 62, verse 9. Again, these terminologies, they escape us because we don't really think about it. Surely men of low degree are vanity. You know, the low lifes, the nobodies, they're nothing. And men of high degree are a lie to be laid in the balance. They are altogether lighter than vanity. What a statement. Men of low degree are vapor. Men in high places are deceptive or a lie. And they are such because they are unreliable human beings. They don't think they're like the other people. And they're unreliable in who they are and in their resources. And David said, both of them are equally lighter than nothing. I mean, what is nothing? How could you be lighter than nothing? See, these are all designed to show us the utter absurdity of a particular topic. So he says, the low lives are nothing, and those in the highest places are a lie because, as far as God is concerned, they're both lighter than nothing. How do you get lighter than nothing? See, these are the concepts that makes me shake my head. Lighter than nothing. They don't even register on the balances or the scales. All of the confidence of a man, all of mankind is weightless and nothing compared to God. I find it's comical and yet is very disheartening for people to say, I'm trying to find myself. I could tell you, you're nothing. Anything that you and I can do apart from the Creator is an insult to the very one who created us. It's insulting to God. I'm trying to find myself. Okay. And you'll find that when you arrive at the conclusion, and many people have arrived at the conclusion, they realize how nothing they are, how they have built their entire life on an image. Their entire life is built upon the pillar of vanity, of nothing. And then they want to die because they realize that if they build their house and who they are on that which is an imagination, a concept, and when that concept is shattered through either reality or age, whatever, then they have no purpose to live. And that's when they start, thinking about clocking out. That's why 24-year-old, you know, content whatevers take their lives. They got all these followers, millions of followers, but they are the most loneliest people on the planet because they realize that same group of people that they're so dependent on. I've seen this hundreds of times, so dependent on to lift them up, to make them look like they're somebody, are the same people that will take you down. And then what? You built an entire facade on the opinions and likability of invisible people. What did they used to tell us about retirement money? Oh, yeah, we got so and so hundreds of $1,000s in the account. What did they tell us about that? It's all paper, it's all numbers. It's all it is. Until you cash it in, all it is numbers. It ain't real numbers. Let it come crashing down. You'll know how real it wasn't. Mankind, all of mankind is weightless and nothing compared to God. Their might is powerless against God. Therefore, one should not trust in the powerful advances of the wicked. And one of my favorite passages of all time, of course, has been Daniel chapter 4, verse 34, with one of my old favorite Old Testament characters is Nebuchadnezzar. But there's a man who, in a conclusion of what he said of himself, should be a litmus test for people to understand who God is. And he did. He's the one. At the end of the days, verse 34, this is his conclusion. After his idiot self didn't obey what God said, he got lifted up with his own dumb pride and arrogance of who he was and his kingdom, what he did. And God said, first, you didn't do it. And second, I'm going to prove it to you. And third, when you finally get it, you'll come to your senses. So at the end of 7 years of God's judgment, at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes unto heaven. There you go. First thing he did was he recognized, wow, now I get it. So I'm sure he looked at the sky in 7 years. I don't think the issue is he never looked at the sky. But when he lifted up his eyes, he finally understood. which is what he said, and my understanding returned unto me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever. He finally got it. Now, the Bible is a persuasive and dissuasive book. Because remember, Paul had told the Corinthians, look, don't do some of the things that Israel did, because you might incur the same wrath that the Jews did. So don't provoke God to display his power in that fashion. It's dissuasive too. It will tell you what to do and what not to do and give you examples of both. It's a very dissuasive book. It's a warning to us. And he says, I looked up to heaven, and my understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. In other words, there's no time in the existence of humanity where God is not all powerful, has everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is everlasting. There is not a time period where God is not in control of everything, or never God. And all the inhabitants of the earth. See, now we even, here's, I just saw this. I told you. I told you. A lot of stuff that I'm teaching, I'm learning right now in the message. Here's another one. We went from the individual nothingness of a man compared to God. We went to the collective with the nations all together, who, in all their power, glory, whatever, compared to God, they're nothing, less than nothing, and vanity, emptiness. Now we go the whole doggone planet, all the inhabitants of the earth. So we go from the one to the nations to everybody. So in case we miss somebody, all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. We don't think that. Come on now. We don't think that. We're not thinking that. We're not thinking it. And until we get there, we can't possibly understand God, because he says in verse 34, I lift up my eyes unto heaven, my understanding returned to me, and I blessed the Most High, and I praise and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. You can't count yourself as nothing until you see everything he saw. Until we get a proper understanding of who God is, there's no way on this planet we're going to get a proper understanding of who we are. We are nothing compared to God. And we spend all of our life trying to make something of ourselves. And we encourage that nonsense. You realize that the entire Old Testament is a model for Israel to raise up their children in the fear and admonition of the Lord? Nowhere in the Bible says get a good job. It says fear God. That was their whole duty and responsibility. We forgot about that, even though it's in the New Testament. Forgot all about it. We could teach them how to get over. We don't teach them that. Little Willie, little Susie, you need to fear God. First, need to know who he is. Hello, Dr. Howard, where can I purchase a Think Biblically hat? That's interesting. First, great to have you. And second, hopefully you're on the subscription. Number 3, Keith Bell. Type in Keith Bell on Facebook. And if you see this, He's the guy who created them. Okay. Great to have you, my friend. Yeah, order from Keith Bell. He's the guy who is the creator, and he's got some new ones too. He's got some. I'm thinking about snatching or suggesting one, behave biblically. I don't see that one yet, but but that's the guy. Keep me posted on that too, brother. Keep me posted. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. I really think we're somebody. We don't get it. We cannot have the right view of ourselves until we have a right view of God. Mm, mm, mm. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. That's us. He doeth according to his will. See, here's a man whose eyes were open. He thought he was all that in a bag of Cheetos. He thought he was all that until God judged his behind, told him everything he was going to do. And he did it. 7 years went by. Amazing. God bless you, brother. He said, I'm taking your classes at Andersonville. I'm currently a next generation pastor. Your classes and ministry are amazing. Thank you. And again, if you're not a subscriber, subscribe, because every teaching that I've been doing, it's almost 800 videos on there already. And there are many others, God willing, on the way. So if you're not there, click it. Anyway, thank you, brother. Again, thank you. God does what he wants to do. See, until we understand who God is, listen, he says, okay, 7 years, I got a whooping. I looked up, now understood who's in charge. And now I blessed and praised and honored him that lived forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generations. Until he understood that, he could not understand who he is in comparison to God. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And he doeth according to his will. There are people that fight that very fight. You know why? Oh, I hate to say. Do I have to say it? You know why they fight the idea of sovereignty? They don't know who God is. I hate to say it, but it says right here, and he doeth according. Listen, I gotta calm down. Wind up knocking off this microphone. Don't we understand who God is by now? Let Nebuchadnezzar tell us. Do we understand who we are by now? Let Nebuchadnezzar tell us. Do we understand who is really in control of everything and every person? Let Nebuchadnezzar tell us. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. You're an inhabitant of the earth, are you? Yeah, I don't think Mars or the moon is in question here. He says, and none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? What doest thou? None. You can't prevent God from doing what he wants to do. I tell you, one of the most amazing and liberating truths you will ever discover is the sovereignty of God. He does what he wants to do. Because by that time, when you understand that, I mean, really, really understand that, you have to previously understand who God is, that he's in control of everything. Until you get there, you'll never accept it. You're going to be fighting against the Almighty. You want control. No, he's in control. And the beauty is you want to be in his will while he's in control. None can stay his hand. God is doing this, and we're trying to do this. And guess what's happening? Nothing. It's all frustration. Who's going to stop God from doing what he wants to do? Who has the ability, the power to stop an almighty God? He's going to do what he wants to do. And if you and I and everybody else want to be stupid and ruin our lives fighting against God, well, you think that's going to change who he is? Is he suddenly not going to be God anymore? You never see God for who he is if you never see yourself for who you are and never accept the fact that he's sovereign, that he do what he wants because he's God of all. Never. And you can't stop him. And you dare not say, what are you doing? Or translate it, if God were a translated, I don't understand why God translated, I don't understand how God, blah, 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 and things dumb like these. Which all they are another way of saying, what are you doing? That person does not understand God at all. They don't know who they are. They can't accept the fact that God is sovereign. Fight it all the time. They can't accept the fact that it's obvious that since God is God, I can't prevent him from doing what he wants. I can't stay his hand. I can't stop his power. I can't stop him from doing what he's going to do. Whatever, because it says, right, none can stay his hand or say to him, what are you doing? Job 42. I could stay at that passage all night long. This is even, I won't say it's better. I'm just saying it's looking at everything from a different perspective. Job, now I know Job knows. Definitely Nebuchadnezzar understood. Job definitely knows. He knows in a way Nebuchadnezzar didn't understand, and that's fine, because Neb got it right. From exalt, and you know how good God is? Let me tell you how good God is. According to that text in Daniel, God restored him to all the power he had before he threw him on that grass. God restored Nebuchadnezzar as now a worshiper of God, gave him back his kingdom, all his servants, all his men servants, all his maid servants, his entire cabinet came back and were thankful and served him faithfully. That's because God honored the reality. You got it now. You understand who I am. And you understand that since you know who I am, you know who you are, and you know who is really in control. Welcome back. Now, Job knew. At the end, God restored everything to Job. Job 42. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know. Stop. Yeah, he knew. I told you Job knows. Forget Bo knows. Job knows that thou canst do everything. See, people look at everything, they start thinking material. You're going to do no material. If you go to a Bible preconception to look for some dumb view or belief system, you ain't going to never study this thing right. You should keep it closed. Here is a man who God took everything from. Everything and everybody except his devil-filled wife, left her there, speaking the voice of Satan, curse God and die, which is exactly what Satan said he's going to get Job to say. Hello, it's there. Everything away from him. And Job Bless his heart, said, Lord, if I've offended you, let me know so I can offer the appropriate sacrifice. That's the entirety of the book of Job. And then God answers Job and says, where were you when I did X, Y, and Z? Why do you think I have to answer you? Were you there when I created this? And were you there when I did that? Then here's what Job said. I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. No thought, no purpose. The word thought speaks of purpose. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Job was living in prosperity. Listen, Job was a good man. Job was the most righteous man on earth. Satan challenged the Lord, saying, oh, you got a protection around that boy there. Got a hedge around him. You know, you won't let nothing happen to him. You let me have him. I'll make him curse you to your face. The Lord said, go ahead. We look at it the other way. We say, well, the Lord didn't want to. He gave permission, grudgingly gave permission to Satan to afflict Job. That's crazy. Satan challenged the Lord. The Lord said, go ahead. In fact, I love the Lord. He said, have you considered my servant Job? He challenged Satan. Have you considered my, y'all ain't reading this book, right? Have you considered my servant Job? He loves the Lord. He's righteous. Ooh, I bet Satan was fuming. Let me at him. Let's see what you got. Took everything away. Job was still righteous. People got Job sinning. The Bible said Job did not sin with his mouth. They don't read that. It's in there. The way what Job was saying, that he was complaining and it was wicked. Job did not sin with his mouth, unlike you sinning with yours, your ignorance. Who did I say that? You know I did. Nothing, no thought, no purpose can be thwarted. Did you see? Job's conclusion concerning God was that God could do anything, that his purposes and plans could not be hindered. He do what he wants. We haven't figured it out yet. We're still fighting against sovereignty, which means you punch yourself in the face. I mean, I'm going to read you some chapters you could look at. I'm not going to read the passages because they're recorded. So you can go back to 37:15 on the recording, and here they go. Proverbs 19:21, Isaiah 14, verse 27, Isaiah 46, verses 9 through 10, the ones we just read in Nebuchadnezzar. All right. That's Daniel 4, verses 34 and 35. And throw in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 11 and 12. These are just a very small sampling. Job concluded that the purposes of God, not only in creation, but in Job's own life, was irrevocable and could not be stayed. Job said whatever God was doing is irrevocable. And Job was a righteous man. I don't understand how God could take away, fill in the blank. He was a righteous man or woman, blah, blah. Shh. Of course you don't understand. The very fact you're saying these things is a clear evidence you have no idea who God is or his purposes. Verse 3, listen, before we even get to that, the very fact we're even talking about Job is a testimony to why God put him through all he did. Because we could talk about it now and learn about God. Was he that hired the counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered that I understood not. Didn't say wickedness, he just didn't understand. Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. So Job took God's question that was asked of him and answered it. He says, therefore I have declared that which I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Job said, these things are beyond my comprehension. That's another truth you'll come to know when you understand who God is. That He doesn't have to give us the answers that we want. See, too many of us are trusting the answer and not trusting the purposes and counsel of God. Job admitted that he spoke out of very limited knowledge, unlike his friends who thought they had God all figured out, and that the things that God spoke about were beyond Job's comprehension. I don't know. God was saying, "Where were you? Where were you?" And Job was like, "Shut up. Shut up, me. Don't say a word." And when God was finished, Job said, "I don't know what I was talking about. I was the things you asked. You asked very simple questions, but they were beyond my comprehension." Verse 4, "Here I beseech thee, I will speak. I will demand of thee and declare thou unto me. I have heard," it's answering the question again of God, "I have heard thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee." So not only did Job hear from God, but he understood him through spiritual insight. Completely liberated. On the ground, full of boils, and dogs licking his sores, and his friends and some noob knucklehead come along and they beat the living daylights out of him mercilessly in their alleged counsel to help him. He's there, and then God comes on the scene and answers question. And he's the most freest person out of all them. He is the most richest person out of all those people there. He was vindicated and he was free. If God was ever going to be on the side of his accusers, it would have happened. Didn't happen because he wasn't. Here was a man who, after seeing just a minuscule glimpse of God's movement through nature, concluded that he could no more understand the totality of God's doings, that he could control nature itself. God said, "Look at nature. What do you think you can figure out about nature? Where were you when I did this, 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 this?" Nature itself. He just, we haven't figured out yet. Oh, we're smart. We educated. We smart. Reading an article yesterday, I had to shake my head. The article primarily talked about, I think, a professor that got fired at a very well-known university because the kids that were getting tests were scoring beyond the average of other people. Like, no way in the world that this man's classes could have this amount of students that were, higher grade like that. That's not happening. Well, they found out that the kids took all the tests home and let AI do the test for them. I told you this AI stuff is going to wreck so many people's lives because you're just going to create stupider people. Stupider. Is that a word? No, is it? Yeah, go ahead and type to see if stupider is a word. If it isn't, it should be. It's more slang than anything else. Maybe even it might even fall under Harleyism. Stupider. Does it exist? Yes. A comparative form of the adjective stupid. How about that? Harley wins again. Even using the word he didn't even know existed. Stupider. And stupidest. That one I did know. All right. Joe looked at nature and went like, I don't know anything. He couldn't even answer, how can I put this, the simplicity of the vastness of nature. The simplicity. of the vastness of nature. Don't think about those things. Of course, others can tell you about God, but until you understand him through direct spiritual insight, your understanding of him is ignorant. And eventually you'll question him. That's why I said we need to stop the whole notion of getting all of our understanding about God from other people and not from the word and our own studies. We can't afford to go, well, he, she, or they know the truth. So primarily, just like these kids did, and professor got the boot and all the grades were thrown away because they didn't really take the test. The AI did it for them, which goes back to a question years ago. A man said, why do we need school? Because everything can be found on Google. Well, who checks Google to see if what they're saying is true? I use Google AI from time to time. In fact, you can't help it. If you're going to ask a question, they're going to answer. And I'm going like, that's not what it says. See, I'm glad I have a little brain matter left that matters because I look at that's not what that is. Well, it's this and that. No, it isn't. Everyone goes, AI said it. Gashmu said, AD do, stuff like that. We just believe it because somebody else said it. Of course it does. What does it say? Yeah, of course it can make mistakes, but that's why it's a disclaimer at the bottom of something. I don't look at the bottom. Most folks will just take AI, chat GBT and blah, blah, blah. And they'll go right to these stuff like that has all the answers to all the questions. But it still doesn't tell me how you got to that conclusion, how you verify whether those conclusions are correct. You just take it for granted. I've asked it medical questions. I'm like, nah, no, that's wrong. That's wrong about this and that and the other. And where it's right is like, they're pretty good. But I would say in my searches on AI, I would say they're 70% correct. And that's a pretty good number, but 30% wrong is not good. And when I say incorrect, I mean not sufficient or it doesn't answer the question correctly. There's a lot of things that it's leaving out. But most people don't have that, again, that mindset I talked about earlier today, the mindset that's more expository bent and exegetically minded, where they look at things, they go, I got to see if this is true. They don't do that. And there are a lot of people that are basically getting their information, like these kids, from either AI or just downright plagiarism of other preachers. And they believe Reverend Dr. Brother Pastor Big Shot because he's Reverend Brother Doctor Pastor Big Shot, know everything, big church, big ministry, big whatever. They don't even bother to find out whether the person's telling the truth. They just accept what they say. Like, no, not at all. Number two, it's our ignorance of direct spiritual insight concerning God that keeps us speaking ignorantly about him. I tell you, the order of getting things right with God has been brought clear to bear in this sermon. Number three, spiritual insight brings contentment to the worshiper of God that is in control of all things, including my life. God's in control of your whole life. You don't believe it. Well, you don't believe who God is. I don't understand. What is your point? That's the whole point, isn't it? The whole point of everything we see here is we can't comprehend what God is doing. That's the whole point. Saying I don't understand is like saying I don't understand is like saying I really don't understand. We know that. What's the redundancy for? Don't you get it? The best you could do is stay on the right side of God's will. Verse 6, wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. I don't see that. So people say, well, Job was confessing sin. People need to stop stupidity. Job said, I retract what I said. I'm greatly sorrowful that I spoke through ignorance of what I thought I knew about you. about that. I abhor myself. Oh, repent in dust and ashes. But what he thought he understood about God. He's the smartest person in that whole group. Turning away from spiritual ignorance towards spiritual insight is demonstrated by confession and repentance. It is to recognize that the problem exists with me and then do something about it. Back to Isaiah 40 in closing. Well, we'll get there. Verse 18, this is another one of the passages I love. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness will ye compare unto him? Now that we know that the nations are nothing and less than nothing and nothing because God is God, then he says to those who are busy making idols, whom then will you liken God? To whom? To what? To what person? To what bird or animal or totem, whatever? What likeness will you compare unto him? I mean, the continued absurdities continues as God declares, what kind of gods or idols can you compare me to? One of the greatest and most mindless acts of rebellion against God was Israel's constant gravitation towards idolatry. It was not just senseless, it was willful rebellion. God and his presence were were towards Israel as no other nation on the face of the globe. Period. No question. I don't care what you say in America or America. The presence of God and the person of God and in his glory was given to Israel. They've experienced this as no other nation on the face of the earth. Nowhere in the world you can compare what God did to that nation with any other nation. If you think you can, look, I have water and electrolytes in this bottle. That's all that's in there, water and electrolytes. Now, if you think that there is any other nation on this planet that has experienced the person and the presence of God like Israel, whatever's in your bottle may be illegal or intoxicating, because that makes no sense. That is clearly not biblical. They repeatedly rejected him for the creation of stupid and worthless idols, which is both the worship of self and sin and Satan. Knowing what they knew and experienced about the true and living God and the only God, God asked the foolish nation of Israel and Judah, what possible idol or idols could you or anyone else for that matter liken me to? This is a rebuke to them. Not so much a generalized statement. This is a rebuke to them. Remember, it's encouraging for the future, but God says, I want you to know that even though I put you in captivity, I judged you and told you why. And I spared a remnant, not because you deserved it, but because I made a covenant with the fathers that I plan to keep. Now I'm going to tell you who I am. I'll remind you once again of what you already know about me and how that your life should be better before me because of it. He said, well, you make idols? Who can, to whom then will you liken God? The word liken means to resemble. How can you make an idol out of a spiritual being? Or how could you have an idol that resembles a true and living God? The absurdity is beyond absurd. Or what to whom will you imagine me to be? A lot of people have great imaginations about God. Stupid. Or make oneself like, as the word faith cult and all of their and Mormon cult of word faith is not but Mormonism in another dress, but basically teach the same lie, that you can be a God, that you already were one, and that you're going to be one. All that's nonsense. No, excuse me. It's worse than nonsense, just out and out blasphemy. And the follow up says, what likeness will you compare him to? How are you going to do it? Likeness is similitude or in a likeness of or like as. I mean, what a great series of questions that God challenged Israel and Judah to ponder. You're all idol makers, so what idol can you? And it's really a slap because of their foolishness. See, we don't teach this stuff. I can only imagine the looks on the faces of the Jews to whom this series of questions were asked. The foolishness and guilt that must have come to mind of the spared remnant of people who deserve nothing but God's wrath, and yet he encourages them by revealing what they always knew, that there is only one true and living God, and that he is God, and that there is none other. How many times in the history of mankind has the Lord declared himself to be the only living and true God? It isn't that we don't know, we just don't want to accept the obvious. It wasn't that Israel didn't know, they just rejected the obvious. We're not done with this topic by any means. We're done tonight, but we're not done yet, because we're going to be looking at a number of passages from Exodus and Deuteronomy and others that God continued to reveal himself as who he is. And yet Israel rejected it numerous times, went to idolatry. Pharaoh learned the hard way. He got stupid. It's okay. You didn't get it yet, huh? You didn't think the plagues were that serious. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to kill a bunch of y'all. And you get to understand. You won't let my people go. Oh, you going to let them go. You going to let them go. I'm going to put you in that Red Sea and drown you behind, too. As the waters come crashing down, the water didn't take all night either. The water went, that's how it went. It clapped. Boom. Game over. When those waters clapped, I guarantee you he got the revelation. Everybody else, them chariots floating around there, got one too. That's the hard way of learning who God is. He saw God's hand move everywhere. Yeah, I'll let him go, but not too far. Now, sorry, plague number whatever. Okay, please, 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 for the Lord, me get rid of all these frogs. I'm going to do it. That's what you want. Frog's gone. I ain't letting y'all go. Oh, okay. Well, let's keep adding. Your heart's getting hard. If you come back here again, I'm going to slay you. Oh, okay. Now it's time for the coup de grace, the ultimate in judgment. I'm going to take care of all the firstborn of everything and everybody. I'm going to show you my hand. And he did. And he said, go. And the people gave him whatever they needed on their way out. Gold jewelry, whatever, here, take it, just get out. Pharaoh said, you know what? That was dumb. Man. Who's going to build all these? Who's going to till the land and build more of these pyramids? Man, we got it off our free labor. Go get them. God did that. Then Israel go, oh, did you bring us here to die? There wasn't enough graves in Egypt, blah, 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 blah. Moses said, be quiet. Go. Steve Parse, they going to run over. Get on. The second that last foot touched that dry ground, Oh, here comes Harley. Shut up. I'm all gone. Praising God on the other side. Oh, yeah. And the Moses, God is a man of war, blah, blah, blah. Next chapter. They murmuring about water. You just came through a water miracle complaining about not having water. Do you think the God that clapped the water, split the water, has any problems giving you a drink? I better stop. That's it. All right, Lord willing, tomorrow. Committed 100 back to Proverbs. God willing, see you then. And remember, Trace, send me that information. And if we're not Facebook friends, make it happen.